Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to TOP's Wellness Workshop Series. We are glad you're joining us today. My name is Rebecca Wilson, and I'm an intern here at Tuscaloosa's One Place. I'm currently in a clinical mental health counseling master's program to become a licensed professional counselor. I'll be serving as today's moderator, helping introduce the workshop, guide our Q&A at the end, and close us out. These workshops are designed to provide education, encouragement, and practical tools related to mental health, wellness, relationships, stress, coping, and everyday life challenges. Our goal is to make mental health information accessible, reduce stigma, and help individuals and families feel more informed and supported. On Tuesday, July 21st at noon. Today's topic is anxiety and depression in adult lives. This topic builds on some of the themes from last week, where we discussed what mental health is and why it's important to prioritize the health of your mind. A few quick notes before we begin. Viewers will remain anonymous to other participants during the webinar. Your face and your name will not be made public to other viewers, and we ask everyone to respect the privacy of those participating. You are welcome to submit questions during the presentation using the Zoom Q&A feature. We will hold those questions until the end and answer as many as we can during our wrap-up Q&A. This workshop is educational and is not a substitute for therapy, diagnosis, crisis intervention, or medical advice. We also encourage everyone to avoid sharing highly personal or identifying information in submitted questions. If you are experiencing a crisis or immediate safety concern, please contact 988 Emergency Services or a local crisis resource. Today's presentation will be led by Maggie, along with Sophie, one of our top interns. I will return at the end to help moderate questions and close us out. With that, I will turn it over to Maggie and Sophie.
Hello, I'm gonna share my screen real fast. Right. Okay, here we are. Hi, I'm Maggie, and this is Sophie, and today we're talking about anxiety and depression in adult lives. We're through Tuscaloosa One Place Counseling Program, and this is week 2 of our wellness workshop.
This is what's going on today on the agenda. We're going to talk about TOP, have some disclaimers, recap of last week. What is anxiety? How does it manifest in our adult lives? What causes anxiety? What is depression? What causes depression for most adults nowadays? Warning signs and next steps. Eliminating anxiety and depression, when and how to seek professional help, what we offer here at TOP, and a Q&A, which Rebecca will hop back on and lead at the end.
Yep. So this is Tuscaloosa One Place. I know each week we'll recap who Tuscaloosa One Place is, who we are, just because in case there's people joining for the first time. So we're a nonprofit family resource center, and we serve West Alabama and a few different counties. And our main focus is preventing child abuse, strengthening families, and just overall child welfare and welfare for the good welfare for the community. Since 1999, the organization has worked with schools, courts, community partners, and has created a lot of different programs here at Tuscaloosa One Place. And like I said before, we are part of the counseling program here. So that is why we're focusing more so on mental health topics today.
And Tuscaloosa's One Place has something to help everyone. So we have a lot of people that come in for intakes and we're able to help them and place them in a program that they might not even know exists.
Yep.
The information shared during the webinar is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace professional mental health counseling, diagnosis, or treatment. Participation in this webinar does not create a therapist, client, or counselor-client relationship with TOP or any of the presenters. So unfortunately, this is not therapy. This is just information. Some of the topics may be a little more sensitive or triggering for some of the viewers. So if you're experiencing an emotional distress or mental health crisis, please seek help from a licensed mental health professional or contact 911 or 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline for immediate assistance.
Yes, and 988 and 911 are 24/7,
Yes.
so you can contact them
We
anytime.
love sharing information with y'all, but unfortunately, we're not licensed. So,
Yes, just psychoeducation. But yeah, so last week we just briefly talked about what like mental health is and also why we wanted to kind of create this webinar series. But this week, is going to be specifically about anxiety and depression. I'm Maggie. For people who have not met me before, I work as the success program assistant here for high school counselors. I mean, for high school students. I work in the counseling program. I'm 24 years old and I got my undergrad degree in psychology and I minored in studio art because I want to possibly be an art therapist one day. But I went to the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, Georgia, and I recently moved to Tuscaloosa.
so Rebecca is the one on the far right. You guys met her earlier. And then I'm Sophie. I'm the one on the left. I'm a human development and psychology student at the University of Alabama. I'm currently entering my senior year in hopes to get my master's in family and marriage counseling. Yeah, I have one more year left and I'm going to start applying to all the schools. I'm born and raised in Florida and I'm excited to be here and talk to y'all for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. All right.
So, what is anxiety and how does it show in our adult life? So, a lot of times, anxiety shows through symptoms like nervousness, rapid pulse, shortness of breath, sweating, trembling, irritability, difficulty concentrating, trouble sleeping, fidgeting. An example in our adult life could be overthinking emails or convos after they happen, feeling guilty when resting, and over apologizing even for small things, and then avoiding opportunities because you fear failure or judgment. Anxiety can present itself in our lives in many different ways, and you might not even realize that it's anxiety. But, if your mind is racing at night and you can't sleep and you can't concentrate just because you have so much going on, um,
Yeah.
it kind of builds up and you'll start to realize that it is anxiety. It's the sudden feeling of severe worry. So when it
Yeah.
can't stop, whatever you do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people think that stress equals anxiety.
Mhm.
And something that like we're going to be talking about a lot over the next few weeks is the difference between just regular stress and regular anxiety or like when does anxiety become more than just everyday
Mhm.
stress?
A lot of people, what Maggie said is right. Like, I agree with what she said. Like, a lot of people do think that just because you're stressed or have a stressful week, oh, I have anxiety.
Mhm.
No, we're going to tell you ways to identify that and how it presents differently in everyone.
Yeah, and also, and because, we're not licensed counselors, we're not diagnosing anybody, and we're not saying like if you have these symptoms,
You
this
have it,
means you
yeah.
have an anxiety
No.
disorder. It's more so these are symptoms that characterize anxiety.
Mhm.
But of course, you'd have to talk to a psychiatrist or
We're
professional
just
to
informing the
know.
people.
Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about what causes anxiety for most adults nowadays. I think another reason that we wanted to talk specifically about anxiety and depression, specifically in adult lives, is because, a lot of adults are always stressed out. I mean, we
A
have a
lot
lot
going
going on.
on,
We
yeah.
have a lot going on. You might have kids, you might have a family, you might be in
You might
college.
have 5 jobs. We don't know,
Yeah.
but
But a lot of times people just think that we adults just have to keep pushing through because we have all these responsibilities. And it is talked a lot and it needs to be talked about more about anxiety and depression for teenagers and
Mhm.
children, specifically high schoolers. But sometimes adults don't get to talk about what it means to have anxiety for them
Mhm.
specifically. But yeah, there's a lot of different causes for anxiety. Like you can see financial stress, too many choices, emotional suppression. But when I was researching this, there was a few things that really caught my attention that I didn't even personally know till I was researching this. So you have a gut health imbalance. So everyone has, a stomach, everyone eats, but your gut health imbalance or your gut balance is really important. Your gut produces neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, which is gamma amino butyric acid. I'm not a scientist, but I'm gonna just try to talk and present it
Yeah.
as best as I can. But these chemicals are associated with mood, appetite, sleep, motivation, and stress reduction. In a recent study, scientists found that your gut microbiome, if you have an imbalance, can impair like how you produce these different types of neurotransmitters. So, to put this into perspective, um, I sometimes have a lot of stomach problems just because I don't know if I'm lactose intolerant yet or what. But I've noticed that like when my stomach is just hurting normally, it can actually cause me to have more stress and
Hmm.
anxiety. Um,
And a lot of the times, anxiety even presents itself in stomach issues. So
yeah.
you'll hear about people throwing up, or you'll hear about
Mhm.
a bunch of just stomach issues. And a lot of the times, that is their body's way of reacting to anxiety. And sometimes it's the
Mhm.
other way where people have anxiety or they have a stomach ache and then they get anxious about their stomach ache. So it kind of goes both
Mhm.
ways, which is just interesting to think about.
hmm Another thing too that I read is about inflammation. So, everyone has inflammation in their body, and it can be, small amounts, or it can be triggered and spike and become chronic inflammation. If you have chronic inflammation, that's when anxiety can present itself a lot more. So when inflammation lingers for months or years, it can cause other health issues.
Hmm.
And that's the one reason that chronic anxiety emerges among people who are critically injured or have chronic health conditions. People with diabetes or other hormonal insulin resistance type of conditions are more susceptible to having anxiety disorders or being diagnosed with that. Another thing that I thought was cool is hormonal fluctuations actually can cause anxiety for
Hmm.
people.
I didn't
Um,
even know this until we started researching it. So
yeah.
super interesting.
A lot of times, a woman has a 28 to 30-day cycle, normally with their hormones going up and down, doing all the things, and a man has around a 24-hour hormonal cycle that goes throughout the day. Of course, things can cause your hormones to fluctuate, different life things, but puberty, pregnancy, menstruation, menopause, or even thyroid issues can cause your hormones to fluctuate. And these biological changes can alter your body's chemistry, which can increase your sensitivity to stress or intensify feelings of worry and restlessness. That's why and I've noticed this sometimes throughout the month, I might be more stressed or more irritable because of where I am in my hormonal cycle.
Hmm.
And sometimes I want to just think like, why am I so anxious all the time? Like, why is this normal everyday stressor causing me so much
Yeah, you
anxiety?
don't think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and might just be instead of a personal failure or a personal struggle, it might
Yeah.
just be my hormones
Hmm.
or
100%.
something going on in my life. But what do you think about all this?
I agree. And the thing that I always think about is how, like, and this also we figured out while we were doing research, but dopamine is a neurotransmitter that drives us to seek pleasure, focus on goals, and feel satisfaction. So that's kind of what they use as the quick fix trap.
Yeah.
But modern life bombards us with instant dopamine hints. This leaves you restless with unstimulated,
Mhm.
yet oddly numb during activities that should generate natural joy. Your brain begins to associate calm with boredom and interpret silliness as a threat and a recipe for anxiety disorders. They all kind of tie in together. The way that the body works is crazy, but just little things like thinking that, you're calm with boredom, like that's one that always gets me is like if I'm calm, then I'm bored, then I'm anxious, then I'm sad. Like it kind of all just goes hand in hand. And
Yeah, and I think too, like nowadays, because everyone is constantly having their phone on them all the time, we are hit with those type of just instant dopamine gratifications, whether it be like most of us have the accessibility to drive a car and be able to go where we want, when we want, be able to look up things on our
mhm,
phone when we want, how we want. And we're just used to that instant
yeah,
gratification. But sometimes that can become that quick fix trap, like you were saying. And I've caught myself in that too a lot of times where
yeah.
I can become more irritable with myself and with my surroundings
Hmm.
because I'm so used to having that instant
Yeah,
gratification.
that instant go, go, go too. Like
Hmm
I know that, you know, a lot of times that when something traumatic has happened or and you were alone when it happened, and then you're alone just in general, you put the two of them together. Like a lot of the times people put, I was sad and alone when this happened. Well, now when I'm alone, I have to be
mm
sad. That's not how it works. The body, The
It can
body's
trigger
different,
that
but it can
anxiety.
trigger it, which is super interesting to think about. Which kind of leads me to the next slide, which is what is depression and how does it manifest in our adult lives? Depression symptoms can be anything as decreased interest in daily activities, changes in appetite that cause rapid weight gain or rapid weight loss, not being able to sleep or sleeping a lot, lack of energy, feeling useless, inappropriate guilt, trouble thinking, focusing, making decisions, thoughts of death or suicide, or noticeable lack of self-hygiene or self-care. Um, just any of those things, if you start to notice them in yourself or your loved ones or your friends, it's super interesting to think about, if someone's sleeping 18 hours a day, if someone isn't sleeping at all, if someone's not eating,
Mhm.
those things you kind of just think about. It can also lead to, like, a lot of the times it's emotional numbness and
Yeah.
it's unexplained physical symptoms. So overcompensating through happiness, I mean, it all kind of just goes together. Depression is characterized by excessive feelings of sadness that negatively
Mhm.
affect the way a person feels, thinks, acts to the point where it interferes with their daily life. So all of those symptoms that I used just now,
Mhm.
that I talked about, is kind of what it's talking about. It just interferes with their daily lives. So like, not being able to do the things that you used to love to do,
Mhm.
not being able to make decisions, simple decisions about like where to eat, or not being able to eat at all.
Mhm.
Um, Thoughts of hurting yourself, that is always one that if a friend tells you that, they need to get help urgently. And then no self-hygiene, so not showering, not brushing your teeth, just the little things like that, not
Mhm.
changing your clothes. They all kind of go hand in hand together with depression.
And I think it's interesting too, like a lot of people, especially adults nowadays, have a hard time distinguishing whether they're feeling just sad or depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And
I know I struggle with that
yeah.
myself. Like, it's like, oh, is this a bad day? This is
Mhm.
just a bad day. It's not a bad life. It's
Yeah.
just a hard day. It's not a hard life,
And I really like what you were saying about like the persistent emotional like being numb and
Hmm.
just not caring. I think a lot of times, or at least for me personally, one way I real like can help distinguish am I being sad or am I depressed
Hmm.
is usually sadness is caused by a particular event or something physical that happens in your life. And kind of like what we were talking about, stress causes anxiety, but stress doesn't equal an anxiety
Hmm.
disorder.
All of these things,
Mhm.
like, I always feel like, from obviously, this is not professional advice or experience or stories, but I always feel like anxiety and depression kind of all go hand in hand together. Like, a lot of the times, you'll hear about people that have anxiety and they also have depression. Sometimes they only have one or the
Mhm.
other, but it's interesting how everything is kind of tied together.
Yeah, and one thing too, before we move on to the next slide,
Yeah.
is going back to like that list of that's on the slide right
Hmm.
there about like how does it manifest in our adult
Yeah.
lives. I think that is really cool about you can use the different type of things that we talked about in the paragraph,
Hmm.
and you can go through your head and see like, okay, is this happening every day?
Yeah.
Am I every day trying to
Hmm.
become busy to avoid thinking about these negative things? Or is it every day that I'm persistently
Yeah.
fatigued instead of just, when you're
Yeah.
sad for a period of time, you might be tired,
Hmm.
but then once that sadness or that issue gets resolved, then you
Yeah.
get your energy back.
It's,
If you have
yeah.
depression, your energy usually doesn't come
That's
back.
kind of like what I use as like the unexplained physical symptoms. Like, you just can't explain it, but it's happening.
Especially pain.
Hmm.
But yeah, so kind of like I was saying in the past slide, so what are some causes for depression nowadays? What causes these people to have these symptoms that we were talking about in the past slide? So stress and burnout, loneliness, social isolation, physical health conditions like
Hmm.
we were talking about. I know that I have a few family members that deal a lot with chronic pain and some chronic diseases and like uh, issues that they have in their life, whether that be cancer or something else, and that can cause depression really
Hmm.
badly. And I have the picture of a cigarette on the slide, and and one thing when we talk about substance use and or alcohol use or something like that, alcohol doesn't or alcohol and smoking doesn't equal depression.
Hmm.
It's more so how often you use it and
And kind of use it to cope.
yeah, if you use it to cope.
Hmm.
And also moderation. When we talk about like some life situations or how you like some people like to smoke, some people like to drink, some people don't like it at all. But when we talk about substance use today in this webinar series, we're not saying that one thing is bad, one thing is good. It's more so about moderation. And like
Mhm.
you were saying, if you use it to cope.
Yeah.
But yeah, and a big thing is lack of meaning and fulfillment. So a lot of times adults, and I know for me nowadays, you can just get in that routine of going to work,
Hmm.
going to school, going to pick up the kids from their school.
Hmm.
You have that routine, and routines are good. But when you just get stuck in that transition of the same thing over and over and
Yeah.
over, you can feel like you have a lack of meaning
Hmm.
sometimes, and that can spiral into depression.
Yeah, so warning signs of anxiety and depression for friends, family, and yourself. They seem down most days, kind of.
Mhm.
All of these things we've kind of been talking about, but this is just like a way for you in your head to just be like, okay, they seem down most days. They're really sensitive, they're snapping
Mhm.
at most things, the littlest things. They isolate themselves, appetite and sleep changes, headaches and stomach discomfort.
Yeah.
They abandon activities, self-care decline is obvious, expressing feelings of worthlessness, all of those things. And then direct mentions or jokes about death or not waking up.
Mhm.
They all, once again, we've kind of been talking about them, but the warning signs for both anxiety and depression are very similar.
Yeah, they are
And
very
that's what I
similar.
was saying when like sometimes you don't know what it is or whatever, but that's why it's okay to get help and to talk to a professional,
Mhm.
because they will help you and you'll be able to figure out what it is.
And also, you can look at this like for yourself too, because sometimes it's easier to see these things in the people that you care about and
Mhm.
love. If I like, especially, I know I've had some friends in the past, and I can definitely seem like, oh, they seem very agitated, or they're not taking care of themselves. I can tell that they're staying up all night.
Yeah.
They're sleeping for 2 days straight. And it's sometimes easy to see that in your best friend or someone
Yeah.
you care about. But it takes for me personally, it sometimes is harder to see that and characterize those things in
Yeah.
yourself.
Someone once said to me, treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. So if
Hmm.
you tell your best friend, hey, you need to sleep more, reflect and be like, do I need to sleep more? Like
Yeah.
I always try to treat my body how I would treat
Hmm.
like or listen to my body how I would tell my friends to listen to theirs because it's easier said than done always. But you need to think like if I'm telling Maggie, hey, I noticed that you haven't been sleeping, you haven't been
Hmm.
eating, you haven't been talking a lot. I'd be like,
Hmm.
but I'd flip it to myself too and be like, have I been doing those things? Are we going through similar things?
Hmm.
You always gotta think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and especially I want to also piggyback on what you mentioned earlier about the jokes
Hmm.
and stuff. I know this can be seen more so in like high school
Yeah.
or teenagers who make sometimes will make jokes about death or being depressed and all
Or
that kind
killing
of
themselves, like
stuff.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But it can come off like I think just keeping that ear out to
Hmm.
just those sudden, even if it's not necessarily a joke. Sometimes adults like it can just slip in there those little things about just so tired. I wish I could never wake up.
Yeah, you just gotta think about like when
Hmm.
someone says those things and like what they truly mean.
Hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, what'd you say? Like, are you okay?
Yeah,
Like, was that a joke or like, are you okay? Like, they're just, it's better to to clarify than not at all.
and to also just realize like you might have to work a little bit harder to tune into your adult
Hmm.
friends because they can hide it sometimes
They
easier
sneak
than
it in
just,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so just taking the next step, like this is just some things that, you know, some things you can listen and feel for. So like listening, empathy, and resources. So listening, reach out privately. Hey Maggie, I'm worried about you. How can I support you?
Yeah.
And then if Maggie, opens up, okay, well, let's go get some help, encouraging that professional help, offer to help them find a counselor or go with
Mhm.
them to a mental health clinic, just being like, hey Maggie, I'm here for you. You're going through this. I would love to go with you to the clinic. I'd love for you to get the
Mhm.
help that you need. And then sharing resources, like United Way, top right where we are. We offer great things. And then Hope Point, all of those places, even just located locally in Tuscaloosa, I can hey Maggie, I'm worried about you. Are you okay? Okay, she
Mhm.
opens up to me. Let's go get help. And then, they might tell her, hey, I think you need to go over to Top. They have great
Mhm.
resources for you. And you can even just be like, hey Maggie, you need to go to Top. Can I go with you? Can I help you? And
Mhm.
just being there for that person and just knowing that they have someone that will support them and stand behind them is sometimes all people need. And that's
Yeah.
why like getting a counselor is helpful because sometimes people just need someone to listen to them.
Yeah. And I think too, specifically when it says like the empathy part, like a lot of times, adults have sometimes more pride than younger people do.
Mhm.
And especially because you might have a prestigious job, or you might have, oh, I have 5 kids, and my kids are dealing with stuff, so I can't deal with things
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So when someone asks you, like, hey, how are you? Or I'm worried about you, I think it's good to, for me personally as well, to remember, like, to lower my pride down and be
Hmm.
like, hey, am I okay? It's okay to talk about these
Yeah.
things, even if my teenager is dealing with the
Yeah.
same
You
thing
know,
too.
it's okay to not be okay. And I always say that
Mhm.
to people. It's okay to reflect and be like, I'm not okay and I need help.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And you know what? You have so many people that are willing to help you, and even so many people here at top that are willing to help you.
Yeah. And also, sometimes people aren't ready to get the help that they
Hmm.
might need. And even if your friend might be dealing with an anxiety symptoms, they might not have an anxiety disorder. So
Yeah.
you can't diagnose your
No, we're
friend.
not doctors.
You can't diagnose your friend. You can't be like, oh, you have depression or you
Yeah.
have anxiety. I think it is just like more so, instead of talking, like
Hmm.
listening, like you were saying earlier. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what helps eliminate anxiety and depression. We've talked a lot about what it is, and that can be kind of heavy to
Yeah.
hear sometimes. But let's turn it around.
Yeah, I hope
Let's
hopefully we're not freaking anyone out. You know, we're just trying to inform here and give you
Yeah.
guys the wellness that you need.
One thing that really stuck out to me when I was reading over some of the things that listed that can help is knowing that today doesn't isn't indicative. It doesn't mean what tomorrow's going to
Yeah, and
bring.
it kind of, sorry to cut you off, but it
No, you're
kind of
good.
reminds me of what I said when I said just because you have a bad day doesn't mean you have a bad day.
Yeah, yeah.
Like one bad day, it's okay. We all have them. But
Hmm.
just knowing that, like, you know what, tomorrow's a new day. You're gonna wake up and sleep well and start over.
Yeah. And something I think that works well, especially for adults, because most adults are so task oriented with
Hmm.
their jobs, is setting goals for their future. Kind of like what I was mentioning in the past is
Yeah.
like having those things to look forward to,
Hmm.
creating those different routines, not getting stuck in the same routine every single day. Spending time in nature, spending time with loved ones. And some people might not have somebody to talk to, like we were saying. So even if you have a pet, I know the Tuscaloosa Metro Animal Shelter, they
Hmm.
have, you can foster an animal
You can
there.
even take a dog for a walk
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that's a
And
good
also, if you
resource.
need volunteer hours, it's good for you and it counts as volunteer hours. So, like, literally picking up a dog for doggy happy hour from
Hmm.
3 to 5 on on Monday through Thursday. It's really good for the brain, the body, and the dog.
Yeah, and another point too, is the consider limiting drugs and alcohol. What we were kind of going back to is drinking alcohol, or yeah, like having a glass of wine after work isn't necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes you can just look at
Hmm.
yourself and think like, okay, I've been really feeling down this past few weeks. Why don't I try to take a 2 week break from alcohol
Hmm.
or smoking cigarettes? Let's see how I feel after that.
Hmm.
And you might not feel a difference in change. You might realize that's not what's causing it, but just considering like cutting it down for a certain amount of time to see if that helps.
Yeah.
And the big thing that I wanted to mention on this slide is the walk around the block method.
Hmm.
When you are in this state of sadness or depression or anxiety, and
Yeah.
which could lead to a panic attack, the last thing that you want to do, and I've noticed for me, the last thing I want to do is get off the couch. Like
Hmm.
I don't want to move. I want to stay in the
You kind
same
of become like
spot.
in a slump where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, I'm gonna let myself be sad. I'm just gonna lay
Mm-hmm.
here and not move.
So, a way to try to restart your brain and just jumpstart and get out of that is changing your scenery, even if it means literally just walking outside to your cul-de-sac
Hmm.
and what making a lap around the
Yeah,
cul-de-sac.
even like sometimes when I'm in the office here from 8 to 4 and
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I have a phone call to make. I'm gonna go outside and just go for a short walk so I don't go crazy and I don't,
Yeah.
start to think negatively when you're sitting in
Mhm.
the same spot all day. So it's okay to take a work call outside,
Mhm. And you,
move spots, move from the office to the couch,
mhm. And I remember, John, who is our
Mhm.
supervisor, he was in week one's introduction. He was our co-host last week. He's out of town this week, but he always tells us, he's a great supervisor. He always tells us like taking a mental health break or a 10-minute walk around the block, like you were saying, that's not a suggestion, that's imperative if you
Mhm.
need it. And I think that's a really good thing to have in a
Yeah, and to listen to
supervisor.
your body.
But yeah, so when to seek professional help. So, kind of like what we were talking about, anxiety or having symptoms of anxiety doesn't equal an anxiety disorder.
Hmm.
Being sad or having slumps and
Hmm.
or having depressive tendencies doesn't mean that you are diagnosed with depression.
No.
So, I think a good thing to see, like on what it says on the slide as well, is like, is it impacting how you function? Can you go to work? Are you showing up to work late all the time because of this?
Yeah.
Um, are you having, like you were talking about earlier, crazy physical symptoms that are getting worse over time and
Mhm.
they're not getting better? And specifically, what you were also mentioning, like if you have any thoughts of self-harm or suicidal ideation, like that's a big red flag. Um, but I think, what do you think would be the best like first step to getting like seeking professional help?
I mean, I always say like the first step is just recognizing that you
Yeah.
need help. And then maybe going to a close friend if you're nervous
Mhm.
or trusted, if you're younger, a trusted adult, just someone in your corner that you can tell how to feel and go and figure out what the next step is.
Yeah.
Just recognizing that, hey, I'm
Mhm.
not okay. Hey, Maggie, I need help. Like just
Mhm.
having that one person in your corner will really help you.
And I think sometimes too, like I know I've heard from friends and family members that like they've tried to reach out to a friend or somebody and they might not take them seriously enough. Um, my suggestion for that, and I'd like to hear your opinion,
Yeah.
is like if your friend or family member isn't listening to you when you reach out for help, sometimes you might just need to bypass them and go straight to the source.
I agree.
And we'll talk more about resources in the community that you can go straight
Yes.
to get help. But it's okay to go straight up to a clinic and talk to
Hmm.
somebody or call 988, like you were
Yeah,
saying.
there's so many
Mhm.
resources that are able to help you and help the
Mhm.
community. So honestly, even going into ChatGPT and just being like,
Yeah.
hey, I feel this way, who can help me? And it will help you and it will give you a list of people that can help you.
Hmm.
So here, this is what TOP offers and other crisis resources in the community. So Tuscaloosa One Place offers a variety of different programs. The clients can join for free upon eligibility. So we have the workforce development classes, which, if you're out of a job, we would love to help you. The parenting program, one-on-one counseling services. We have some interns and some friends that
Mhm.
have been giving counseling services, and the clients have been giving positive feedback. After school programs, and then juvenile court ordered monitoring support, everything. Tuscaloosa One Place is a one-stop shop. We have everything and something to help everyone. Other resources in the community are like Hope Point Behavioral and Crisis Center, temporary emergency services. There's health centers, Indian Rivers Behavioral Health, Better Help, online counseling. There's so many programs like that. In Tuscaloosa, if you call 211, they can help you find the right resource or therapist office to call. The Alabama Parenting Assistance Line, PAL, is a free and confidential statewide resource for parents, grandparents, caregivers, and or anyone supporting a family member, offering support, advice, and resources for all parenting challenges. Here's the phone number for us, and that this is our phone number, right? That we've
That is the PAL phone
PAL.
number.
Okay, I'm so sorry, y'all. That's the PAL phone number, 866-962-3030, and it's open Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. And then you can even text if you're not comfortable speaking on the phone.
Mhm.
You can text the number below. You can text PAL to 2744 for 8, and you subscribe to the messages and text for tips, events, and resources. So it's really just awesome. I mean, even just taking a screenshot of
Mhm.
these 4 bullet points, that right there is offering a bunch of help.
Yeah, and picking back what you were saying too
Yeah.
is I really like our programs that we have
Hmm.
here, specifically the workforce development
Yes.
program, because one of the number one causes of people getting into those panic attacks or depression is
Hmm.
if they lost their job or not having that financial
Yeah.
stability. And we have so many great like people who work in our workforce
Yeah.
development. Shout out to Mr. Roosevelt and Miss Christie. They're great. And so sometimes that might just be instead of going straight to see a counselor
Yeah.
or instead of going straight to the Hope Point Behavioral Crisis Center, maybe you just need help finding a
Hmm.
job. Or let's start like with those small baby steps and see if that helps improve your
Yeah.
depression or anxiety first.
Well,
But
y'all, we're at the point where it's time for questions, answers, and discussion topics. So Rebecca is going to tune back in, and the 3 of us together are going to help you answer some questions.
And these
Yes.
are our references right here, but I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'm gonna give it over to Rebecca right now.
Thank you, Maggie and Sophie. That was a great presentation. So we're now moving in to our Q&A portion. As a reminder, viewers remain anonymous to other participants, and names and faces are not being made public. We will answer questions in a general educational way, so please avoid including personal details that could identify you or someone else. We'll answer as many questions as we can in the time that we have. I'll begin with some of the questions that have already been put in there. So the first one I see is, does going to therapy always mean that you'll feel better? Which is a great question. I think in the short term, the process of healing can be really emotionally difficult. Often people suppress pain from the past, and therapy can bring those painful experiences back to the surface. Or sometimes healing involves changing unhealthy habits, which is an uncomfortable process. So recovery and change are also just not linear processes, which can be frustrating when you don't see the progress you wish to see in therapy. But it's important to remember that setbacks do not mean that therapy is failing or that you're failing. Doing something difficult, but that ultimately leads to a healthier life, increases your resilience because it's hard. And it's important to have compassion for yourself as you work to heal yourself. So thank you for that awesome
Yes, we literally
question.
were both just saying that we completely agree with everything that you said, and you worded it so well.
Yeah. And yeah, therapy does definitely doesn't mean you'll always feel better. I know for me, like I've been in therapy on and off my whole life, and most of the time I feel pretty like tired and sometimes I can feel pretty sad after coming back from therapy. But the way that you know that therapy is working is because you have to also look at not how I feel right after that therapy session ends, but how do I feel a week from my therapy
Hmm.
appointment? Do I feel more calm? And I think what you were saying earlier in the presentation that like sometimes that calmness can actually feel like anxiety.
Hmm.
And at least that's a lot of times in therapy, is you have that calmness and you can have
Yeah.
that realization of what you need to do. And sometimes that can bring anxiety. And but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing though.
No.
Yes, very well put. Thank you guys. Um, Moving on to our next question. Should I tell my job if I struggle with anxiety or depression? This is another really good question. So, you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons. So, some of the risks to disclosing to your job, I mean, there can be potential unconscious biases from your management or stigma from your coworkers, and they may not even mean to, but once they know that you have a mental illness or if you even just struggle with those things, sometimes people don't realize that they have some sort of idea in their head about mental illness and they may treat you differently. Um, but there are also benefits. So, you can secure some legal protection for yourself if you disclose to your HR department or your manager, and you can also typically choose just HR. You don't have to tell your manager. And it can help if you disclose to them, you don't really have to hide your symptoms anymore. If you were, really trying to be rigid at work and can take a load off your shoulders. And I'll talk a little bit about the legal protections. So, the American Disabilities Act, ADA, protects employees from discrimination and protects your right to not disclose. So, when you're in a job interview, you are not required to disclose that you have a mental illness. The ADA protects you from that. And you don't have to tell them even after you have the job. So, you have some protections. Um, and then also, and it protects you from discrimination from your job. So, once you do tell them, if you choose to, they are not allowed to terminate you because you have a mental illness. So, kind of helps a little bit. Also, the FMLA is a type of job protected unpaid medical leave. So, if you have a serious health condition, which one of these mental illnesses could qualify, you'd have to consult with a professional, but it could qualify. They're not allowed to fire you for having to take medical leave because of your illness. And this is one of those things where you could just go through HR and you don't have to tell your direct supervisor. That way, you're not disclosing to people that you feel comfortable telling. Um, and so it kind of protects your privacy, even though you have to tell someone that you're struggling. And ultimately, this all boils down to, do you work in a place that you trust will treat you well if they found this out? Or like, are they going to remain professional? Or is this somewhere that you probably don't need to disclose? And that's kind of just on an individual basis, unfortunately. In a perfect world, all workplaces would treat you well no matter what you're going through. Um, so, Maggie or Sophie, do you have anything to add for that?
I think you did
Yeah, I
good.
think you covered it all right then and there.
Yeah.
I can't even top that. That was perfectly worded.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
you can go with another question.
Yeah, I think that there's
Um,
another one in there.
I don't have panic attacks, so does that mean it's not anxiety? Great question. Not everyone with anxiety will have panic attacks. Anxiety can be characterized in a lot of different ways. And I know we went over a lot of different symptoms. Just because you have two or three symptoms, but not a couple of the other ones, does not necessarily mean that you don't have anxiety. It can look very different for a lot of different people. And honestly, there's a different diagnosis for a panic attack disorder. So some people have that, but they would not be diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And there's also social anxiety disorder. So there's a couple different things going on here that are all under a very general umbrella. I would say if you're experiencing distressing symptoms that are interfering with your life, you should go see a professional and hopefully they can diagnose you with what's appropriate. I know it's easy now to get on Google and Google your symptoms, and that can still be helpful in at least giving you some ideas of what's going on. But it's really best to go to a professional and ask for their opinion and just tell them all of your symptoms and lay your cards on the table so that they can handle it.
Yes. Sometimes Google will tell you the worst case scenario and that you're about to die. Do not listen to that. Go seek professional help. Don't take Google help because I know I've been sick before and I've looked it up and it's like you need to go to the hospital now and I'm like, okay, my stomach just hurts.
Right.
Are there any other questions?
I think that might be it. All right.
We can
Thank you.
probably do one of the discussion topics real quick. I think we have 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Why don't you pick a good one that you'd like, Rebecca?
All right. Um, I think it's good to talk about toxic positivity. Like, have you ever in your life heard people say, just stay positive, or at least fill in the blank here when you were struggling with something?
Yes, I've heard that a lot in my life before. Um, I think that I think it's almost down upon sometimes in society nowadays, for adults to be negative or to be have any sort of
Yeah.
negative feelings in their lives. And I think that sometimes people can think like talking about anything negative means that you're a negative person.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were talking about kind of with substance use, talking about negative feelings doesn't mean you're a negative person. It also just means like how often are you talking about these negative feelings? Um, One thing I would say is if you are catching yourself talking, being negative more often and talking about these negative things and not being positive at all, that's actually a sign that you might be dealing with depression and you might not even realize
Mm-hmm.
it.
A lot of the times, like you really don't realize until you think back of things that have been happening in the last couple of weeks, ways you've been acting, and then you're like, oh, wait, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I need some help, you know. You realize that. It's
But
super interesting to think about.
and it's still good to be positive. I mean, it's still good to look at the positive sides of life. I mean, that's one way, making like a gratitude list, that's one way that helps me whenever I'm
Hmm.
sad. But I think, yeah, try not allowing yourself to have any negative emotions or say the truth of like what's actually happening in your life. Yeah, that's toxic positivity, in my
Yes, for
opinion.
sure.
What do you think,
Yes,
Rebecca?
I agree. I think you shouldn't, if you're talking too much about negative things, then yes, it's a sign that something's wrong. But if you're telling your friend, oh, just be positive when they're trying to tell you something difficult, you're kind of invalidating their experience and you're not allowing them to kind of vent to their friend. And also, it can make an experience that's already lonely even more isolating for them if they were having a hard time coming to you with an issue. Now you're making it even more difficult for them to talk to you about it in the future. So it's a good way to catch if your friend is dealing with anxiety or depression, if they're talking to you about these things. So you don't want to say, oh, you just need to be positive. Then you may not see any warning signs.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah. I think that, you know, everyone's different too. So just thinking for yourself and realizing. But do you have any other discussion questions, Rebecca?
I have one more for us.
Okay.
Just a thinking point. If you had a friend who spoke to you the same way that you speak to yourself on your hardest days, would you keep that friend? And that's just Sophie saying no. And that's just kind of
Kind of
thinking about how harsh and self critical some of us can be. And that's a really easy thing to do because we want the best from ourselves and we want to strive for excellence. But I think it's important also to have compassion for ourselves.
100%. And it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about earlier, where like you got to treat yourself as if you would how you would treat your best friend, you know? And sometimes it's hard to just like sit back and reflect and realize, but like don't be mean to yourself. Like there's only one of you. Like treat yourself with respect, treat yourself how you would treat other people. Like you're not like don't be so mean to yourself, you know?
Yeah, and especially with anxiety specifically, I know like what you were saying, Rebecca, is like not everyone has panic attacks, but for the people who do have panic attacks or even internalized like panic, um, I don't know if any of y'all have worked in childcare before or have children of your
Hmm.
own, but how do you deal with a kid that's having a panic attack? Or how would you deal with your younger self if you were 5 years old and you were panicking?
Hmm.
Like treating yourself, looking at your inner child and being like, okay, my inner child or myself is
Yeah.
panicking right now. What can I do? What would I do if I was taking care of my younger self?
Yeah.
That's at least what I tell myself sometimes when I'm having anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very important to be gentle with ourselves. All right. And I don't think I see any more questions. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you again for joining us for the Top Wellness Workshop. We appreciate your time, your attention, and your willingness to have important conversations about mental health. Today, we talked about what anxiety and depression are, their warning signs and causes. We also touched on ways to help reduce feelings of anxiety and depression and indicators of when to seek professional help for anxiety and depression. Before we close, I also want to briefly share a little bit about Tuscaloosa's One Place. TOP is a family resource center that works to strengthen families and connect individuals and families with helpful supports in our community. We offer a variety of programs and services, including parenting support, workforce development, counseling related services, volunteer opportunities, community outreach, and referrals to local resources. If you or someone you know could benefit from support, we encourage you to reach out to TOP and learn more about what we may be able to help you with. Our next workshop will take place on July 21st, which is next Tuesday, and we will focus on healthy versus unhealthy coping skills, and we will include definitions. This webinar series is open to anyone who is interested, so please feel free to share the webinar link with family, friends, coworkers, or others who may benefit from joining us. For more information about upcoming workshops and TOP services, please check out our social media or website. Thank you to Maggie and Sophie for leading today's presentation, and thank you to everyone who attended and participated. We hope you have a great rest of your day.